Holy Spirit, be my guide. Welcome to another episode of the Paul Larry Podcast. I'm so glad you guys been subscribing and joining in. And for all two of you subscribers, I just want to thank you. I'm not saying that all two of you subscribers in a bad or sarcastic way. I'm genuinely appreciative to the two subscribers that I have. And every episode that I make, I have both of you in mind because it's not, I don't take it lightly. I don't take it lightly that you watched my podcast and says subscribe, hit a bell notification for reminders. That is the greatest compliment I can get, and I appreciate it. And I also know that something I said touched you and affected you in a way that make you want more. And in this episode, I pray that it will be very insightful and helpful in your own journey. Emotional intelligence, it's such a dynamic topic. It covers a wide variety of different things that goes along with it that are very important. The reason I started my first one with the root is because I believe that is the core. Tracing an emotion to the root to me has been a game changer for me as I'm still walking through my healing journey. And I know I'm just scratching the surface in my own walk, in my own therapy. And my desire to create a podcast and my desire to share into a community is because the help that I'm receiving, I know that it is going to help people. And I know people of my generation, I know people of the generation above me, and even the younger generation. I know how therapy is viewed. I know how it is viewed also in the Christian community. And if I could be a small part of change, if I could be a small part of helping one person break generational cycle, break generational curses, I know that it'll be worth it. The next president may come off of the lineage of somebody that broke a generational curse and freed his bloodline. And I'm all about it. So in this episode, as we touch on emotional intelligence, I do pray that bloodlines are changed forever. And if you did not see the last episode on the core, on tracing an emotion back to the core and the importance of tracing an emotion back to the root, go back and watch it because it's important and it shows you why it's important. And I gave you two different examples of like being in love and one with abuse, where tracing the core of an emotion helps free you from pain, helps free you from making bad decisions, helps free you from drama and a cycle of behavior patterns, right? And that's why it's good to get to the core of an emotion where you address situations in its proper way of addressing it, as opposed to addressing situations with the drama of that situation, as well as the overwhelming emotional response from past hurts and traumas, and the ability to separate the two things to properly address the situation. Now, this episode is going to get extremely deep because we're going to talk about communication and how it connects with emotional intelligence. And one of the things about this episode is I believe it needs to be shared and everybody needs to hear this, because emotional intelligence is not only understanding your own intelligence, your own emotions, excuse me. Emotional intelligence is not only understanding your own emotion, it's also understanding the emotions of people around you, like your loved ones, your wife, your children. And it'll be difficult for you to understand their emotions if you first are not emotional and intelligent enough to understand your own. So it always begins with you, right? Healing always begins with you before it can be extended out to your loved ones within your household and within your environments, right? So same thing with emotional intelligence. You have to first start developing that emotional intelligence, which I'm a junior in this. I'm literally now learning, and I'm learning each session in therapy. So I am not coming to you as an expert. Please, I'm not coming to you as an expert. These podcasts are literally being made after some therapy sessions, after what I'm learning. And part of me addressing it and documenting it is that I can keep it. I can go back to these for myself and remind myself. And I know people are going to be healed from it. So what I'm learning about emotional intelligence, right, as it pertains to the people around you and understanding their own, is the communication aspect. So what I'm learning about emotional intelligence as it pertains to the people around us, and understanding their emotions, right? Once you start understanding your own, you can understand others. Here's the key, the communication part. And this is where it gets deep. This is where siblings are not speaking to each other for generations and years. This is where divorces are happening. This is where just trouble in the marriage. The communication part of emotional intelligence, it is so deep. And I'm going to address a few scenarios just to give you insight. First scenario, I'm going to start with me and then I'm going to talk about my children, right? First scenario, we're having a family movie night, right? And usually on family movie night, one of my kids, it's always the same thing. Every movie night as a family, they would constantly do things to get reaction out of my wife and I, like, make noises during the movies, try to fight with each other and stuff like that. And I would always get annoyed, and it would always end up in the same way, where I get annoyed, I lose interest, we pause the movie, and it's like, guys, stop, and it's just chaotic. And this particular movie night, this came after a few therapy sessions where the therapist was helping me understand my own emotional responses and how it affects the family around us, right? And we're having a movie night, and my son is doing the same things again. And here I am thinking that I have it figured out, right? And I'm like, okay, well, I know what he's doing. I'm processing it, right? I'm trying to now, I'm navigating my own emotional reaction and triggers. Hear this. This is important. I'm navigating my own reaction. So I'm not letting it get to me. And he just keep doing it. And the fact that it's not getting to me maybe is causing him to do it even more, because he was like, wait, it's not working, right? And he kept doing it and doing it. And I just moved the blanket off of me. We all have blankets on the couch. And I excused myself and I went upstairs. And they all thought I went to use the restroom or something. So they just kept watching the movie, right? And I did not come back. And after, they were like, well, Dad, why didn't you come back? And I was like, just shut down, like, no reason. Here's this. Here's the point. I went to my next therapy session and I began to tell the therapist about that. And I am telling her in a way that I'm so proud of myself. I removed myself. I didn't allow myself to get triggered. I went upstairs and I calmed down. And her response blew me away. It blew me away. She was like, well, why did you remove yourself? And then I was like, no, because, I was getting triggered, and, I avoided and I processed. And she was like, but why do you think he was doing that? And I'm like, he was just trying to annoy me, and this is what he does. And she was like, well, why was he trying to annoy you? It's like, I don't know, maybe he wanted attention or something. And then she was like, when was the last time you and him went out, just the both of you? Yeah. I was like, it's been a while. Understanding emotional intelligence, right? When you understand it for yourself and you can understand it, somebody else's emotions, it can solve a lot of issues, avoid a lot of drama. What she was telling me, right, is he was probably acting out because he wanted attention. And when a child feels like they're not getting attention, right, and if they're doing everything right and still not getting attention, they're going to go the other way and do things to get your attention, right? And the attention they get is negative attention, right? But negative attention is a lot better than no attention, right? And here, let's go deeper, right? Let's go deeper. So yes, he was seeking out attention and he was seeking out negative attention, right? Let's go deeper. Our ability to communicate, his ability to communicate, and my ability to communicate requires us to lose our ego, requires humility. Here's the thing, right? If he begins to understand why he is acting out, if he begins to understand that I need attention, that is him also becoming emotionally intelligent, which first starts with me leading that and teaching that in him. He could come to me, lose his ego, and say, Dad, can we go out? Me and you haven't really hanged out. Me and you really haven't chilled, right? And that would ignite something and be like, sure, buddy, like, yeah, all right, let's do something. Let's go fishing. Let's do something, right? So here's the thing. As parents, our role in this is first to go humble ourselves and go and get therapy. You don't have to have this traumatic childhood to say, I need therapy. Go get therapy, because a lot of what we learned, if we grew up in households where our parents weren't healed themselves, then obviously there's things in us that we need to figure out. Go get help for yourself. To begin to understand your own emotional responses. Then you'll begin to see the people around you, and you'll begin to see their emotional responses. And as parents, you can help guide them. Also, practice communicating it and making it part of the household, making it normal. One of the things that I'm starting to do in this journey, and it's going to be an uphill battle, I'm trying to change habits. In my case, right, I am being extremely intentional about being vulnerable, because I am trying to break habits, right? Because in the household, and in most households, let's be honest, right, especially in our community, in most households, we are not honest about our actual emotion. We are not honest about what the root is of the emotion. Well, what do you mean by that? Think about this, right? Brother and sister, right? Think about it. Brother and sister, you're fighting. One says something very hurtful, right? The other responds in anger. Here's the thing. The initial emotion that triggered the anger was hurt. But not everybody is willing to say, I was hurt. They usually go to anger. This is hurt. This is anger. This is what we do. When we get hurt, we get angry, or we get depressed, or we get emotional, or we get revengeful, or we get spiteful. But the hurt, this is where it's at. And the communication part of emotional intelligence is being to communicate hurt. So we could say, right, before we turn the hurt into something else, if we could just address it at its core and say, I was really hurt by that. I feel angry. I want to get hot. I want to get revenge. I want to get depressed. But this is what you've done to me. If you could communicate the hurt, a lot of times it avoid the drama from escalating, because there's just something about humility. When somebody knows, and not in all cases, trust me, I know with the comments, not in all cases, but for the most part, when somebody expressed that they was deeply hurt by something that we did, it's easier to come back and apologize or my bad it or try to resolve it, because nobody's looking to go out there and purposely hurt another human, right? Now, I know there are exceptions, and I know there are cases with narcissistic people and so forth and whatever. I know those are deeper issues, and you can't solve everything, right? But you can solve most things, especially in a household where there's love and no one is purposely trying to hurt the other person. And I will say this to my kids all the time. When they're fighting and they're telling me what happened, right? And they're telling me the story, and it was like, well, he did this and I got angry. I will say to him, I'm glad that you told me like how you felt, but what was the initial feeling when he said that? I was angry. Now I would say, no, think about it. When he said that or did that, how did it make you feel? And he'll be like, yo, I was hurt. I was like, okay, so you went from hurt to anger. And what he saw was anger when he did or said that. Now, what if you were able to walk away from that situation and say, you know, that was really hurtful. I was playing with you, and then you went and did something that really hurt my feelings. His response, and I know my kids, his response would be like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. I was joking, but I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Right? Communication, understanding your emotions makes it easier to communicate it. But there's also a need to let go of the ego and the pride that hinder us from tapping in and communicating our true feelings. And as I started to get healed within my own house, right? Within my own house, I'm being intentional about being vulnerable. Hear me carefully. Within my own house, I am being intentional about being vulnerable. So I am saying to my kids, hey, that was hurtful. I'm saying to my wife, hey, you know, the reason I feel this way is because this is what's coming up in me. And I know it's an emotional response from triggers from my childhood, and I need to process this. My wife will say, If you want to go sit out in the patio and process it, and we could come back and have a conversation. I'm being so intentionally transparent about what's going on. What am I doing? Yes, I am responding to my healing, but I'm also teaching the family and showing the family through the modeling technique, right? Modeling it, that it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to share your emotion. It's okay to understand your emotion, right? And now we're breaking the cycle of the household in which I grew up with, and the cycle in which my dad and my mom grew up with, and the cycle in which their parents, it's being broken and it's being changed, where we are in a different environment, a different situation. And my children, I think the blessing with my house is they get to see a before and after version of dad. They get to see the same person as far as taking them fishing, doing this, doing that, providing. They get to see the same person that does and that do, but they're seeing a different person before and after therapy. Hear me out, because I know people, especially in my generation, and I know we do so much for our children and our loved ones, right? I know what we do. So what we do doesn't change as far as being providers and being parents, right? That don't change. That actually, to me, it actually gets better. But they know that we're there, right? What they're seeing is a different person. Hear me out. They're seeing a before and after. Same provider, same things that we do for them, but a different person. Wow. Wow. And they'll get to, and the blessing of those of you who decide to, I'm going to start to go to therapy now, this is what you're going to do, especially if you have older children within the household, or even if they moved out. They get to see a difference. The generations behind them will just see the healed version. They will not know the other version, right? Which is great. But I think the greatest blessing for my children and for your children and for your families, not if you don't have any children, for your families, is witnessing two versions of the same person. And let me tell you something, it's the greatest blessing. So in the last episode, we talked about a particular feeling and emotion tied back to its root and where it first happened. In this episode, we're talking about emotional intelligence, tying it to being able not only to identify it within yourself, but to identify it within others, right? Their emotions. Because then you can help, especially in the case of parents or loved ones, can help them navigate that. But then also communicate it. And the best way to handle communication when it comes to emotional intelligence is, one, be the model. Be the model for how you want emotions communicated in your environment. Don't expect it out of others by just expecting it. Model it. Lose the ego and tell people that really hurt me. All right? Lose the people and say, I'm not going to let hurt turn into anger. I'm not going to let hurt turn into depression. I'm not going to let hurt turn into vengeance. I'm just going to say I'm hurt. Right? And if the person really loves you and they realize they hurt you, they will apologize. Because in the most cases, like I said, no one wants to hurt loved ones. And a lot of times we're not willing to say we're hurt, right? So it goes so deep. Understanding emotions goes so deep. And I do understand that sometimes people use their hurt as a manipulation tool, and that's just also another part of emotional intelligence, understanding what's going on and the situation, because everything is situational. But you could put all that aside and say this, that I have to start with me. Everybody is different, every situation is different, every experience is different, but you have to start with you. And the whole call to this podcast is not only to help people find their journey through seeking medical and professional help, but it's also to walk this journey together as a community. I do not come to you as an expert. I come to you seeking your comments. I come to you seeking your advice. And I also plan on doing some lives where we could walk this journey together as a community. I hope this podcast was helpful to you. I hope that you learned something from it. And I hope if you have some insight, please go ahead and put it in the comments. I would love to walk this journey with you. Oh yeah, and also to touch on one thing, somebody put in the podcast episode back. I forgot what they said, so I'm paraphrasing, and it's like, you just need Jesus. Thank you, brother or sister, whoever put that in. That is so true. And just for full transparency, I am a follower of Christ. I do walk with Christ daily. I don't put it on the show, but I literally pray before every episode, humble myself, and ask God to help me as I'm being transparent. So I am a deep follower with Christ.